Did he leave already?
No.
Thank you. If you want to take off and go
You want
home.
to ask about this Trails End? He was going to report on that.
Trails End?
The road.
I thought they closed that place. Wasn't that up at Hinckley?
Can we,
What trail?
We talked about the road dedication, which is on my agenda. Chris?
Yeah.
Can you step up?
Yeah.
He is stepping. What's it say?
We brought up the road dedication previously. There were issues concerning stormwater problems in the area and possible activities or actions that the developer may have taken as it relates to the piping that came from Whitesboro and the impact. I know that their engineers, Delta, provided information relating to stormwater, which was reviewed by the planning board. I know some members of the board had concerns about stormwater and possible mitigation. I wonder if you could just address your opinions on it.
We've been in contact with Delta considerably over the last year and a half, and when it came down to answering all our questions, we found that they had gone above and beyond what the law required them to do. The issue comes from Whitestown, and the flows that come from the town pass through this property to get to the, what I'll call the watershed area that goes from Bosse's and down to Middle Southern. We looked to try to do a larger detention area on the property, and there was some green space that was just too high of an elevation, we couldn't utilize it. And we looked at pre-existing versus post, because there was a thought that it may funnel through where it never funneled through before, and we found that that wasn't the case either, that it always funneled through. So after several weeks of discussion, we determined that he's done essentially what the law requires him.
You say what the law requires him to do. We've had this on 3 other projects of recent time, and I'm not going to name them again because we've all heard of it. And what happened was, subsequent to that, the town expended its own money of hundreds of thousands of dollars to correct what was supposedly taken care of by the developer under the legally minimum standard. Okay? Now, are you telling me we're not going to have a drainage problem up there because of this development?
I'm not saying that he's causing a drainage problem, no. I'm saying most of the problem comes from Whitestown. The problem should be fixed in Whitestown, not at the bottom of the stream.
All right, but we all know that the minute you put a pavement down, the minute you put a house, you've just increased your probability of flooding. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you're saying that anything that this developer has done is not going to create any type of flooding up in that area?
Correct. I'm saying that the pond that he put in, which he wasn't required to do, will mitigate his on-site water that creates that drainage problem. The problem doesn't come from his site, it comes from Whitestown.
So he's not increasing the flows, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
He's decreasing them?
What was happening to the problem coming from Whitestown prior to these houses being built?
Say that again?
What was happening to the flow coming from Whitestown prior to these houses being built? How was that being dealt with?
It was coming right through his property, going right to the wetland that it does now, except now there's a detention pond in the back.
Okay. How did that water get over to some of the residents' houses next to it? Which we've seen pictures of.
That was across Middle Southern Road.
Okay?
That's not attributed to this development.
It's not.
That's a larger watershed that extends all the way up to Route 840, over to Bosse's, and then out and around Whitestown.
So you're talking about Liberty down here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the wetland that is what I'll call west of Middle Southern Road. And this development's kind of just a corner of that watershed.
The flooding that you're referring to is new flooding
That's what I was told by the resident,
on
the
Liberty?
owner of the residence, yes.
And we're saying that may have been caused or exacerbated by the change that this project has brought about, whatever changes were done today.
That was one of the things being mentioned. And that's why I want to make sure, because if what you're saying is the water that was coming down from Whitestown is going in the same direction that it did before, that's one thing.
It is.
But if that, how can that be? I mean, you put a couple of houses up, you put driveways in, How can that water not be changed because of that development there?
As we show in the memo that I gave her, there's actually a pre and a post plan. I came down the road from Whitestown, funneled down a gravel driveway, and then down a swale into the wetland. It still essentially does that. The only difference is now they put a larger culvert in instead of the swale. So the path is still the same. Any on-site properties that were to be developed now flow into this larger detention pond. So the on-site stuff within the confines of his development is mitigated. All other outside drainage is passed through.
As it was before.
As it was before.
So just a quick question for you. So the pipes that are under Middle Settlement Road that go across, this retention pond pumps into those pipes?
That detention pond will relieve into the wetland, which eventually makes
Goes
its
to the
way to the
pipes.
pipes, which always happened.
Which happened before.
Yeah. Except now it's controlled to take what rain falls on this property, those 9 lots.
Now, another question for you. I know you didn't probably do a study of it, but the pipes that are there, is that something that the Oneida County has to take care of? I mean, are they sufficient enough to hold all this water? Or are they...
That's been the discussion that we've had with several times, is the only way to determine what size structures are needed there is to figure out.
Because that's really where our
What
problem
that drainage
lies,
area is,
which
right.
has always been, is that those pipes, they clog up, they're inefficient. I mean, I think there's even water, to believe, that goes over that road down there. So,
Correct.
I mean, is that something to work on? So, you know,
Eventually,
I may not be a
yes.
developer, but I'm saying by,
I think Rick has information on that.
The only thing I want to add is, in the last 2011, our 2 major storms, and this June storm, 2013, is when they had the flooding, like every other part of the town did. With normal rain, that water does not run over Mill Center Road into Liberty. It's our major storms that we've had where we get hit, the whole town.
Rick, have you talked to the county? I know that was
I
an
have
issue.
talked to the county, and the improvements up there, they're going to clean the ditches this summer, check those pipes, make sure they're fully open, and I did talk about cleaning another ditch on the other side of Middle Settlement Road by the railroad tracks,
Which is east of that culvert.
east of that culvert. But everyday flooding has not occurred there. It's the major big storms that we've had. That's when I saw the flooding on Liberty.
but Rick, just a question, and nothing with this development, but the actual pipes themselves, when we do have the major flooding, what's actually causing that? Is it the pipes are insufficient, or is it they're getting clogged up and they're just not cleaned? I mean, what's causing?
It's just so much water with those larger storms that it can't take it.
I think the assumption is they're undersized for those storms that are causing
Right.
it.
Is that something you think that we can fix, though, those pipes, get them done so they're the right size, so it you know, takes on the water?
That's a discussion that I'm having currently with Oneida County.
Okay.
This, you mentioned the retention area that's going to be, going to solve the problem. Going to make it better.
For on-site,
Okay.
for on-site stuff.
So this document to the developer from Delta, the first bullet, the area available to construct a detention facility is limited to the da-da-da-da-da. The third bullet, given the site limited available capacity to provide storage, it is likely that any detention design to fit in this space would be minimal.
That's his own, Delta's his own engineer.
I understand, so explain where we are here.
He's referring to the upgrading area that's green space. So there's I believe it was 5 acres or so that is west of the 9 lots that we left as green space. And we asked them, said, hey.
Upstream of those lots or downstream?
It's not really upstream, it's kind of, it would almost be in the path of the flow if the flow was a little to the west, coming down out of Whitestown. So the flow would have to come down out of Whitestown, hang a right, go over to the green space.
So where did these suggestions come from, and now they've been?
It came from us. We asked them to investigate, can we build another retention pond, a larger one, off to the west? Rather than have green space, let's use that area to create a larger storage area.
And now Barton and LaJudas is saying it's not necessary.
He's saying that it can't, I mean, it really doesn't do any good.
How did you think it was gonna do any good?
I didn't know, because I didn't know the elevations.
Well, who made the recommendation?
We asked him to look into it. And when he came back and gave me elevations and a profile.
All I'm going to say here is one thing. I think this was poorly planned. Sit down, please, Tony. This was poorly planned by everybody involved, including our own engineering firm and everybody involved with it. We've got a situation where an area has been flooded, whether it was during heavy rains or not heavy rains, and we proceeded with a project that probably should have been looked at a lot more in depth, months, if not years ago, okay? And now these things are being brought up with suggestions, but we don't know if it's a suggestion because we really didn't look into it. That's not sufficient for me, okay? Gentlemen, you can vote on this the way you want, but I think this was a poor situation from the get-go and from every party involved, including the town. You can vote, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Tony, did you comment?
Mr. Seward, just very briefly, I understand the board's feelings. Thank you, Mr. Law and Mr. Sherman, for the factual background, and I appreciate just a couple of comments. I represent Mr. Kessler and his company. He has met every request by the town in terms of engineering. The record, the engineering is going to show he went above and beyond what was required by the law. All we're here tonight to do is to ask the town to comply with its own law, which says that if he does A, B, and C, you will accept this road for dedication. Chapter 102 of the town's own code. All the submissions are in. All we asked is that the town attorney issue the letter that's necessary, and you resolve to accept it for dedication. He's ready to pull building permits, and he's incurring financial damage with his lenders because of these delays. We need to move forward, and we ask you to act. That's all I have to say.
Gentlemen, discussions, questions?
Well, I appreciate the council's input, and we've seen instances where developers have met the letter of the law, and we still end up on the hook for some serious damage and continue to incur that damage. I have a problem with it, and I understand the issue that the council brings up.
Anyone else? Jim?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I hate to see other residents, suffer from any damage caused by drainage and so forth. What is there anything that we can do to correct this or prevent this, or anything going forward? I mean,
To Jim's point, I think, do we have some direction that we would like the developer to take? Is there something we can tell him tonight?
Well, I asked Chris today if there was anything else that he thought. Chris, is there anything else that you think could alleviate these concerns that the developer could do?
You could put a new culvert in under Middle Sutherland Road. I mean, that's really the problem is when it comes down to Middle Sutherland Road.
I don't think legally he can do that.
No, you're right.
All right, so he can't do it, so why would you bring it up? What we're asking is what he can possibly do.
No, there's not.
Nothing.
Okay. We're looking for a motion to approve the adoption of this road, dedication of this road. We don't have a motion. Do you want to say something?
Well, I just think we should talk about legal ramification or executive session.
Yeah, that would be executive session.
Okay, moving on.